Yo, what is going on, guys? Godrekton here, and today I'm just going to be bringing you a quick build guide just to kind of explain what I'm building at the moment, as I'm not really making enough videos, and being that a lot of the projects I want to make are fairly long and more comprehensive, I feel like I want to make something like a little bit more easier to digest and just something I can just kind of talk about off the fly instead of making you guys wait for things. And I thought, you know what, why not just make a video, like a sort of, a normal video where I go over my runes, my builds, just like I used to do like many years ago. So I kind of figured this is maybe needed because I keep getting a lot of questions asking me to just to like comment on why I'm building certain items and stuff, and I think it's just easier if I do a video like this for now. But yeah, let's just get into it anyway. So as you can see here, I'm currently in Masters. Since I started playing the game again, last couple months with my internet being fixed, I got Masters pretty fast and I dropped for a little bit, but then I got back into Masters and I've been hovering around 100 to like 150 LP at the moment. A little bit hard stuck if I do say so myself, but I think it's just more down to me having just to fine tune my gameplay a bit more. But I think the way I'm playing is, like, I definitely have like a different idea and perspective how to play Renekton, like a lot more recently, which I am going to go into very shortly. But just to answer a question right now, do I think Renekton is weak right now? Not necessarily, but I do think he needs some kind of like extra mechanical, some kind of quality of life change, because at the moment I kind of feel like everyone around him is getting buffed except for him, and I know it's because pro play likes to pick Renekton and play him a very, a very strong way where they either leave him on weak side and they can draft like stronger picks on the other side. If you don't know what weak side means, essentially you put a champion that's very self-sufficient top lane or like bot lane, maybe more so top lane in this case, but you put them top lane to kind of fend for themselves, like to play very safe, and then your other side of the map can be more focused by like your jungler or like the enemy team's jungler, and then focus that role and get them ahead, while the Renekton can just kind of stalemate top lane and survive. Because Renekton's a very good survival pick, and that's why I kind of favour Renekton winning a lot of hard matchups that he probably shouldn't win, to be quite honest. But yeah, I think Renekton's very unique in that aspect compared to every other top laner in the game, and I think that's just why he's like strong too, and why Riot doesn't really want to mess with him, because if they do give him some buffs, it can push him back into pro play very easily, and then obviously cause him to get nerfed again and just make the whole champion experience very frustrating. But right now, I think he's in a pretty good spot. There's not like random people picking the champion and like inting with it. Like mostly the people that say he's really bad are the same people that didn't really main him, and they just kind of want to complain because all they play is like, they just meta abuse and pick whatever's like good for the time being. But either way, I think maybe a Q revert, like some of the nerfs on that could be, given back to Renekton. You could argue maybe his health later on in the game, although I don't really think health is the best stat because of how much health shred is in the game. Like when you have things like Blair Rune King, LDR, cut down as a rune, you have all these things that just kind of counter health stacking as the game progresses, and I don't think it's really that great to have the health back unless you're playing like a Frostfire Bork type of build. And if you're not aware of that, that is like something I want to go more into in another video. But of course, right now I'll just kind of say what I'm playing, say what I think is good, and obviously give you guys, I'll answer some questions in the comments too if you guys have anything that you want to know. But all that being said, let's get into the runes. But actually, before that, I forgot to like finish my point. So the buffs and stuff, like I think that would be pretty good, just because everything around him's getting buffed. But I think Renekton's still very playable. It's just a mindset thing, because I know that when I'm like at the strongest point in my mindset, like where nothing around me is putting me down with like teammates or maybe outside things, I tend to perform really, really good on Renekton, and I think that is something a lot of people don't think about when they're playing Renekton at a higher level. And I think it makes sense the more you think about it, because like Renekton's a very feast or famine based champion, meaning that he wants to get ahead, or if he like falls behind, he's kind of out the game. And as toxic as that could be argued that he works like that, I think it's very accountable when you make mistakes on Renekton. So every mistake you make is a lesson to, like, you know, learn from. Like, even if it's like very harsh where your jungle is forcing you to do a really bad play, like, you can still learn from that and then notice that, okay, I shouldn't have followed this play, that is my fault. And then obviously you will just perform better and, like, get better as a player. And I think that's what separates Renekton from every other champion in the game, because he really teaches you the importance of playing good, and he really, like, hones in on the mistakes too you make. Like, if you make a small mistake, it can be very costly, and I think it's kind of fair, but at the same time, it is a bit more punishing compared to other champions that can make mistakes and get away with it, like Mordekaiser, Aatrox, Garen, you name it. But either way, let's get into the build aspect of this video. So, what am I currently running in runes? Now, to your guys' surprise, I'm actually running a lot more Conqueror recently, and you might ask, but why do you go Conqueror? Didn't you always used to say that press the attack is better with how Renekton combos and stuff? And yes, I did. I still think that to a extent, but what I didn't really think about or, like, really test enough of is playing Conqueror into losing matchups. And I think a lot of the harder matchups that Renekton struggle with, Conqueror actually makes the matchups very playable, which is, you know, very interesting in itself. But so let me just explain the theory on when you take both of these runes. PTA, the whole point of taking PTA is to one-shot and, like, burst people down. If you're very proficient at fast comboing and just, like, you know, being like, it's a matchup where you want to be in and out, like a Darius, a Set, a range matchup where you're trying to, like, keep your health up and play off your E cooldown, then go in, then that's where I press the attack is going to get a lot of value. And if you're against anything that you can just kind of dive, like a Riven, Yone, Yasuo, any free matchup like that, press the attack is a very good rune. It's a very, very good rune. And you can then go Prowler's Claw, you can go traditional Bruiser with it, which isn't bad. Like, there's a lot you can do with press the attack, but here's where it isn't so good. Champs that do consistent damage to Renekton and have lower cooldowns make Renekton very, like, the Renekton pick just becomes very weak. And because you're playing off E most of the time with press the attack, you're not able to get enough damage out to beat a lot of these champions with Q-Poke or anything like that. So when you picture things like Gangplank, Gragas maybe, I'm trying to think off the top of my head for matchups. Let me look at champions real quick. Just so I'm not missing anything out, because I want you guys to understand where I'm coming from with this. Potentially Aatrox, but I think that's like a PTA lane. But yeah, like Gangplank, maybe Garen for some people, Gragas, Alawi, Jax. Like, these matchups that I considered quite hard, Conqueror is very good because you always have extra damage. And if people try to all in any way, then you can kind of fend for yourself with the healing you're getting too. And I don't know, maybe it's like a mental thing, but I feel like every time I go Conqueror, I'm just winning these matchups. Like Gangplank. Gangplank was a very hard lane that I'd struggle with and I'd have to ban, but ever since I've been watching a Chinese player by the name of Yu Zhaoyu, who's a probably one of the best Renektons, like, in the world right now, and his brain for, like, the way he builds and the way he plays matchups is insane. And a common trend is he plays with Conqueror, and it kind of developed a new understanding for me on how to play a lot of these lanes. So I'm being way more aggressive, which is another factor Conqueror allows you to have, because you constantly have AD, like, every time you're hitting someone. Your Q has more poke and more healing, which helps you get through a lot of these harder lanes. Like, it ends up just being very easy, to be honest. And then I can go Gore Drinker and be a stat check. Like, the whole idea of Conqueror and, like, taking into these matchups is being a stat check. So I can outstat my enemy and end up winning the fights. And I don't have to wait off my E either. I can be as aggressive with my, like, Q and whatnot. Like, it's just very good, I think. And I think it's very underrated. And maybe it's not so much underrated, but at least now. But in the past, like, I guess it was just always strong and I just never really played it enough. But even now, it feels pretty good. But is it still better if I took this rune in matchups like Riven, like any easy matchup? Like, is it? Could I possibly go this rune in every matchup? I think you could, but press the attack still gives a lot of value. And as I've shown in my Prowler's Claw video with the damage graphs, I'm still getting way more damage out of the rune, which makes a huge difference if I'm playing carry-based styles. But the whole idea of Conquer is kind of going for really greedy and longish fights, which doesn't always work in matchups like a Darius or like a Mordekaiser per se, because again, I want to be in and out and then go in like when he's low enough where I can just one-shot them, which is where press the attack favors over Conquer instead, if you see what I mean. So yeah, like, I think definitely give it a try if you're not going Conquer, if you're like a PTA user, because in the past, a lot of really good Renekton one-tricks, like very respected ones that is, would always tell you never go Conquer, including myself, but I feel really at a guilt for saying that, because I think it's very good, and it allows Renekton to win even more matchups. Matchups that were, like, close, like, to, like, a point where it's not even as close anymore. Like, it's really crazy. But yeah, that being said, I like going both of them, and that's kind of my theory on when to take them. I could show, like, a graph at this point. Not a graph, like a tier list at this point in the video, when you could go PTA and Conqueror, which I'll list right now, I think. So, yeah. Those are probably the matchups that I'll take it into. Next, let's talk about what runes I take specifically in the PTA tree. Now, these aren't right, because they're not set up properly. Let me fix that real quickly. Okay, so these are the runes I'm normally taking with press the attack. So, firstly, Triumph. Triumph, I mean, it's just the best tree in the slot. Like, you don't care about Presence of Mind or Overheal. Triumph is just, you know, you always take that. Your next rune, I kind of flick between Alacrity and Tenacity there on the game. Like, if the enemy has a lot of CC where they draft, like, a Nautilus, Leona, like an Elise, trying to think on top of my head. Like, anything with a lot of hard CC, like, Tenacity is just really good. And then if I'm against an AD top laner on top of that, I can rush my Plated Steel Caps, or whatever they're called, as a boot option. And that makes me able to deal with crowd control in the game, and it allows me to deal with the CCs. But in the games where there's not much Tenacity, I will go Alacrity, because attack speed is very nice on Renekton. I can build more Fury faster, I can auto-weave faster too, faster animation cancels. Like, it's just really good as well if I can take that. But obviously, most of the time I am taking Tenacity, because there's always a lot of CC being picked in my elo. And I'm sure, like, in lower elo too. Next, I always go Last Stand. There's an argument to take Coup de Grace against squishier champs, but I just think with how Renekton works, Renekton is very strong when he's, like, low health, or just below 50% health, because that means he gets more Fury. And if you don't know this, if you check Renekton's passive, he actually gains 50% more Fury when below 50% health. So, that means, basically, if I get 5 Fury for every auto attack, I end up gaining 7.5 Fury per auto attack. And if I Q or something, like using an ability, I end up gaining, like, 15 Fury from 10 Fury. So, it's very strong, and when you factor in Last Stand, it allows you to make more insane outplays against the people you're playing against. So, that's kind of like my theory on taking it. And you actually get, like, way more percentage damage too. As you see, 5 to 11% based on, like, health. And Coup de Grace is 8%. Which then it is factored, like, if enemies are 40%. But a lot of the time, I feel like you just want to... I feel like it's just better having Last Stand. Because you can already one-shot without Coup de Grace. But having Last Stand just gives you a little bit extra damage. And it is... Well, not even a little. It's like a lot of extra damage, actually. Like, think about it. 11%. PTA is giving you 12% just from activating it. And then if you have a Prowler's Claw, that's like, what, another 12% or 10%, whatever it is. Like, you get so much percentage values in damage, like, it's crazy. Like, Blair Rune King too, 12% current health damage, like... You do a lot of damage just having this rune on low health. So that's kind of like why I take it. Next, I take Resolve most games. Now, people can vary with this, like, they can go, like, Sudden Impact, Ingenious, or, like, Taste of Blood instead. This would be good if you just want to, like, get some extra Q healing, or, you know, just have some bit survivability in lane. Or Sudden Impact and more lethality on dashes, Ingenious to have lower item cooldowns or Prowler's Claw. Like, these are very good too, but I feel like if you want to win every matchup, Resolve basically gives you that. Think about it. If I want Sustain, I can take Second Wind and Revitalize. That means people can't poke me out of lane because I build D-Shield first. And then I can survive these like hard matchups like Bane, Quinn, Action, if you want to consider that hard. Like it just becomes very easy. Like I don't need to like have this ego approach where I'm taking these runes and then losing lane and coin flipping, like if I can outplay or not. Like these runes give me like way more room to make a mistake and kind of like sustain back up. And then when the enemy has less mana just from consuming it from abilities and so on and so forth, like it ends up just being very like helpful for like harder matchups. So I definitely consider this pairing, but to explain these runes real quick too, I guess. Second Wind, obviously the more damage I take, I heal over time. Add a D-Shield on top of that, it's a lot of health regen. Revitalize boosts that on top of your Q healing, which, you know, gives Renekton more survivability in a lane. And any other extra healing like a Gore drinker too. And when I'm low health as well, like when I'm below 40%, I gain even more healing, like 10%. So that's pretty crazy, you know. Like, again, it just factors in with the last stand and the outplay potential with the rune. And I didn't take this rune like for a while. And I kind of regret it because this rune is low-key very good. Very good. Like, pretty crazy, actually. Another pairing that I can take is Bone Plating and Unflinching. Which is like what I normally take into melee-based matchups, like a Trendemir, Jax, like anything that wants to like fight me. And if I have the Bone Plating up, that adds like more survivability. I can tank their damage and then like stall out and then abuse like the enemies right after. Bone Plating is just a really good rune, not just because it blocks damage, but it's also like a psychological thing, which a lot of people don't talk about. So if I'm going to dive a person and their Bone Plating's up, what does that mean exactly? That means I can't exactly dive right away, because if I'm diving when they have that up, that applies so much damage mitigation to where the enemy might end up surviving. Like, you know, if I empower W, they're blocking like 30 to 60 extra damage on each of the, you know, proc of the Bone Plating. Like, there's 3 parts of the Bone Plating, and it's taking away 30 like each potentially. So it's like I can't W that at all, and I can't like just combo it. So I have to make sure I take this out first, so I end up having like as much damage as possible for the dive, and there's no way the enemy can survive. So flip this around, like the enemies have to play around that when they're diving me, and if they don't, then I end up just outplaying the situation and surviving. So it's a very good rune in that aspect too, which prevents dives, which ends up happening a lot in high relo. So it's a very good rune, I think. So the next rune I take with Bone Plating, I take Unflinching. So this rune has been very good for, I don't know, over a year now. Like ever since it got buffed, because you gain 10% tenacity and 10% slow resist. And a lot of top lane matchups either have some kind of stun or slow where you are going to be gaining effectiveness. And as the game progresses in the way that you want to approach a fight, like being a team fighter or whatever, the lower health you get, the more resistances you gain too. So it ends up just being very good for a Bruiser type playstyle. So I can end up tanking more CC, like slows, and people can't really escape me. So I find it a very good rune just to take game to game mainly, if I don't need the Revitalize or Second Wind. Well, more so the Revitalize here. Another rune I can go is Overgrowth, which is also a very good rune. But you could argue that maybe you're not getting as much effectiveness out of it because of how Renekton is. Like, Renekton gains... So with this setup, I think by the 25-minute mark it was, and like having really good CS, you can get 250 bonus health. Now, while that's pretty good, and it is giving your old Alter pre-nerf health back that we lost on Renekton, you know, it still takes time to stack, and it might not always be the best option. And I think it's a better option to take when, like, you're going for more of a Bruiser playstyle again, where, you know, you're playing with a Frostfire, where that extra health is going to help give your Titanic more damage and make you more tankier in the long run of things. Like, it could be good in that aspect, but again, like, I'm not so much taking this rune as much anymore, unless I'm going Frostfire, or if I need to go another rune, I'll take this. But yeah, you can kind of take like either of these three mainly. It's kind of up to you, like based on preference. Okay, next tree, let's talk about my Conquer runes. So the same theory kind of applies with like when I take the other runes, but the only difference is here is that if I'm playing Conquer, I'm often taking double adaptive. Now, I didn't really talk about this in the last page, but the whole theory of taking attack speed is that it makes your gameplay more fluid, meaning that if you're in lane early, you have like a lot of attack speed, so you can end up last hitting better, you can get more autos off easier. You know, fast animation cancels, again, is a benefit. I can build Fury faster for trading combos and stuff. Like, it's a very useful rune, but what I find that it's not so good into is, again, like the matchups like Gangplank, Jax, things where I'm going to play off my Q more to poke. And when I play off my Q a lot more, then I want to just have another AD shard. So I'll end up like taking this page where I want to be this AD stat check that I can just like poke a lot with Q, get extra healing as well. And if I'm against like these Gangplank or Jax type lanes, I end up like taking these runes more so. Or I might take a bone plating, but if it's Gangplank, it'll be like this. If it's like Jax, it's like this, if you know what I mean. Because Gangplank is applying consistent poke to you with his Q. So that's why you want the additional sustain-based runes against that matchup. While Jax tries to go into burst, and that's where bone plating is more of a safety net to kind of prevent him from getting his way in the trades. So if I am taking double adaptive, it can feel a little bit bad, but that's where I tend to go alacrity too. And in some cases, I might swap my Revitalize to an unflinching if I need to have it. Yeah, you can kind of experiment like how you like it, because with me, I like having attack speed, and if I don't have that early, it can kind of feel a bit lackluster in some situations. So I'll kind of like flip between these like runes, like based on the game. Like, it's whatever you're comfortable with at the end of the day. Like, if you like playing a certain rune and you have a certain playstyle and you're playing well with it, then you should keep doing it. But just be open-minded that there are like many other runes that you can play. But yeah, these are like my Conquer runes basically. So with that being said, let's get into the item builds. Okay, so time to talk about builds now. So at the moment in my games, I'm kind of running many different mythics. I'm gonna go explain like the purpose of that, because I keep getting asked this question every time I stream. I won't lie, it's a little bit annoying now, but I kind of understand it, because it's like a lot of the time you either have Godrekton players or you have Prowlers core players, because that's how I like would play Renekton. But right now I'm going things like Stridebreaker. I'll go back to Frostfire sometimes, Sunfire. Like, and I just get asked all the time, like, why are you going these items? Don't you go Prowler's Claw a lot? Like, but here's the thing. I think with Renekton, he is basically the most versatile champion in the game with what he can build. And because you're so versatile, that means you have way more tools in the game to, like, perform and do different tasks. Like, if you have to be a frontliner, you can build Godrekton, and then be this, like, you know, giant, like, tank, I guess. That's how, I don't know, that can kind of snowball early towards the game, but maybe fall off later. But you can also just be, like, you can just go, like, Stridebreaker, and like have a slow, like there's a lot of different like theories and like ways you can play him if you know what I'm talking about. So, you know, I kind of build based on the game. So if the enemy has a lot of mobility or like a lot of champs that are like ranged, Stridebreaker as like a Bruiser build helps a lot, because they cannot escape you. Then you can just instantly burst them, and you have the same combos as a Godrekton does, except that Stridebreaker is giving you more dueling power too, how fast the attack speed is you're getting. So that overall means more DPS. And Godrekton is just better, like, if I want a front line, soak more damage in, have the health active, like, you know, there's just different uses of how I can play them. So with the first build, I kind of have this right here. So the whole idea is, if I'm against, like, I don't know, like a tank or a Bruiser, like Set, Maud, stuff like that, Darius, their Rune King is obviously better first time. I've said this, like, for a while now. It's because, and if you're wondering why, basically, the passive procs on Renekton's W 3 times, and because it's proccing 3 times, that means I can melt like whoever I'm against, which makes it super insane, and no one can really outduel Renekton. It's by far his like biggest power spike item, and you're gonna notice in every build too. I do feature the Bork first in these type of scenarios, but if I'm not against that, I can just go like my Bruiser mythics first. So again, When do I take Stride Break over Gore Drinker? I do that into like range matchups or like squishy champs that kind of want to escape, or maybe I just want to be more of a carry too, which I kind of aid Stride Breaker to being a better item for that. While Gore Drink is a better weak side item, or an item where I want to play more of a front line. So it's just kind of like how you want to play it. But I do feel like Gore Drinker gets countered way more easier from healing reduction. So most often, I'm not building it like game to game. I'm building more so Stride Breaker because I think it's just better too. I think a lot of people overlook the stats and the passives it has. Like, you're gaining moon speed every time you hit something. The active applies for 3 seconds. The slow, wait, 3 seconds? Yeah, 3 seconds. Like, it's just really good, I think. I just think a lot of people aren't really playing it enough. And I do advise you guys to try this out because it's one of my favorite items right now when I'm playing Renekton. But anyways, those are kind of like the ideas on like when I go both of these mythics here. Second item is often a death stance if I'm playing with the intention to team fight early, which if I've like hard on my lane, I want to roam like in a game when my team's losing, I feel like death stance is a better item. Just for that, because I have a lot of armor from the item. I get AD. If I kill someone to my lead, I'm healing all my health back, so I'm being very imposing in the game, having its second item. However, if my team's like doing fine and I want to just dominate the game even more in side lane or skirmishes, that's where Rune King is going to be a better item second, if I haven't built it already. Third item, that can pretty much vary like on the game, but if I haven't built Bork already, I could build it there as a third item. If I don't want to go like a dueling route and I want to be more of a front line, I can go Black Cleaver if I need it. So this helps me shred armor for my team, and in a team comp where my team has a lot of auto attackers like a Jinx, I'm trying to think, like a Kindred, like just something that attacks a lot, and like you want to shred armor against like a tank team like Malphite, Ornn, and so on. Black Cleaver's a really good choice then. It's not my favorite item, but it's a good like third item to get, I feel like, in those type of scenarios. Now, another item I could get is more Mortius. This item is insanely broken right now on Renekton, or just on any AD caster, and because Renekton gets a lot of AD throughout the game, you're making use of the shield way more. So when you have 400 AD, that's like a 1000 magic resist shield you're getting, because it's the same AD ratio as Renekton's W. So it ends up just being very crazy into AP comps, and with AP champs being a lot stronger this season too, with the introduction of Shadow Flame, Luden's being better, and so on, I think it's just a very good item against those type of champions as well. So you can pick this up third in those type of games where the AP carries a third. If not, you can build it later. That's also a good option. Fourth item, you can kind of build whatever. It's just based on the game. Like, you could get a GA, so you have more diving power, more survivability into AD comps. It's really good then. You could build a Titanic Hydra, just have more health, more AD as well. At that point in the game too, I think you'll have like over, let me think. You'll have like around 3k health, and maybe ulting 3.5k, possibly. So you start getting a lot more value out of the item too, to like do more damage. And I think it's just like a lot better then. Or third item as well. You could go with that in like another build that I'm going to show. But yeah, you can just kind of build whatever else for the game. Sterix is also listed in this build, but I'm not a big fan of it after the changes. I think that more Malmortis is a better shield item a lot of the time, but if there is a game where you want to stack more health, like let's say instead you have yeah, like let's say you have these items instead as like your 5 items, like you're gonna get way more value out of Sterix because it scales off the more health that you have, and this build obviously gives way more health for Renekton, like these 5 items, which is then when the item's gonna have more effectiveness and overall be a better choice than more Malmortius. And it's better into like split damage comps too, where there's a lot of AD burst, AP burst, and you want to be more a frontliner too. But at that point, I think you should only build this item like around 4th or 5th item, like your last item. Just because the AD scales based off level now, and you don't get it earlier. That's why you never see Bruiser champions go Sterix second anymore, and why it's less of an option. But with that being said, that's kind of like the Bruiser Mythic build here. Like, I think these are pretty good, and in some other case, you could also get a Stone Plate last time. Stone Plate is a very good item, but it's a lot of gold. Maybe even a third item. Like, anywhere from your, like, third item, you can build any of these, like, listed here. So it's just down to your own preference, really, on what you want to play. Next, we have the Scaling Tank Mythic builds. Now, I say tank, but it's still like a Bruiser build necessarily. But you might ask, why would I take these over going Bruiser Mythics? Well, first of all, the whole idea... Okay, I just lost the Frostfire. Interesting. Here it is. So the whole... Okay, League's just bugging with me, I guess. Never mind. As I was saying, the whole idea of this build is basically to scale throughout the game and have a lot more damage than your typical Bruiser build. I would say, if you want to end the game fast and you know you can end it fast, then a Bruiser Mythic is way better. But if you know the game's going to like be a little bit longer and you're playing to scale, I think this build is way better. But it's not so much that you're playing to scale, it's just that you're going to see better results as the game goes on with this build, with how it functions. But that doesn't also mean you can't play it like for an early or mid-game build and not win. Like, you can definitely do that. It's just kind of like what you prefer. But anyways, so with this build, you always want to rush Bork with it, because Bork carries over your damage like throughout the whole game. And this is why it's, again, like another good item first, because if you're building it first, you're countering any health stacking that the enemies get through levels, items, runes, like all of that. So throughout the whole game, you will be having damage. Like, that's just how it is, and that's why it is also so good. After that, you can also end up building a tank mythic, which then your damage is still really high, and it keeps getting higher too after you've built it. But Frostfire is also a cheaper option, and it gives you like mixed damage as well. Like, you get mixed AP damage from the burn, the percentage damage too, which is increased off your max health. And being that this build is centered around max health too, you're getting like a lot of extra damage out of these items as well, like as the game goes on. You might ask, when do I go either of these tank items? Frostfire is good, I would say, when you want to do like you don't want to stick in the fights too long, but you want to have enough where you can burst someone down and have a slow, which your team then can follow up on, which I think is, you know, very good for that aspect. And another thing about this build too is like the Mythic passive gives you 100 health per item, meaning things like Titanic get even more effectiveness out of the whole build as well. Like, you can get 5k health with this build alone. 5k health with your ult, and you have up to like 90, 80 like in total of your Titanic Hydra. So you're not only are you just super beefy, but you also have a lot of AD. And that's where it's like really good as well. The stats are a bit lackluster, but again, this is like more of an item where you just kind of like want to build it, and then your third item you spike even harder with the Titanic, which you always want to build, by the way, in this setup. On the flip side, Sunfire, while costing more, is better for longer fights. So if you're in a game where you're like playing against like a Darius set, like things where you still want to snowball over them and have like better 1v1 dueling potential, that's where Sunfire is a better option. Because the longer a fight goes, the more damage you're going to be doing. And then it ends up being very massive as the game progresses, because you're getting even more damage just based off the health you're getting. So with that being said, that's kind of like the theory in like these items. And then you go Titanic third. Obviously, by that point, you get a lot of health. You start getting a lot of AD. It just works really well. And I can't exactly explain like why, but it just does. And I think it's just because of the health you're getting. And I feel like at that point in the game, not everybody has the health shred to deal with you either. Like, people either build LDR second, or they'll build it like 4th item on carries. So in a game where you're not really against someone that can burst you down as an AD carry, like, this build ends up being super good. Like, things against like a Jhin, things with like low DPS, they can't really deal with you at all. Like, you end up just rolling over everyone, and the item setup just becomes very strong. And it's also very cost effective too, like if you go on the Frostfire option, because it's very cheaper compared to every other Mythic. So you get an easier power spike while doing a lot of damage as well. After third item, you can kind of build like whatever base for the game. You can build like a Moor maybe. You can even build it third if you want to, like Zhao Yu, the Chinese Renekton player I'm talking about. He likes to build it third in games against AP, which is still very good. You can build Cleaver for extra health, Armor Shred, maybe Hysterics if you wanted to, Gargoyle, like, you can kind of build whatever after these 3 items, but that's kind of like the whole idea of it. And I think I will be playing this build a lot more in this patch because I think it's just very good at the moment, and I kind of want to give it another try as well. And finally, the last build for Renekton that I like to go is obviously the full ID Prowler style. So nothing's really changed with this, but if you guys are unfamiliar on this whole playstyle, this is basically Renekton's best carry playstyle if you want a 1v9 games. Like, if your goal is to dominate the early to mid game, then this item setup is just the key for that. It's the blueprint for ending games. So we've already talked about Bork. Bork is a very great snowball item into tanks and stuff like that. But Prowler's Claw second, that's when like things start getting really good for Renekton. Like the dash allows you to instantly one-shot people, the lethality from the Mythic passive, like the stats all around as well. It ends up just being a very snowball-heavy item. Now, you can build this first as well into range matchups or fighter-based champions like Riven, Fiora, Yon, Yasuo, you name it. Like, anything of that nature, I think Prowler's Core is good. But otherwise, I'll go Bork, and most of the time, being them against Bruiser or tanks, I'm often building Blair Rune King. So no matter what it is, you're always like swapping between these items, like based on the game. But you're always getting them too. You always want to get both of them. Although there is a case sometimes where you rush Prowlers, but you might need to get Death Stance just so you can team fight, which you can do that as well. But again, it's up to you. It doesn't feel so good in side lane, but in team fights, it feels really good if you want to just like team fight with your team. But third item, it's basically, at that point, we're going Death Stance, like I was just talking about. Death Stance is a very good team fighting item. Allows you to tank extra damage. Every kill that you get as well, you end up healing your health back. So, in scenarios where you're trying to dive onto an AD carry or something and you kill them, you end up healing all the extra damage you've taken. So you have more survivability, and it also aids the full AD playstyle too, being a lot more defensive. And that's kind of like the theory on like when I build it third. And most often, I'm building it every game, like this slot, so I recommend that too. However, if the enemy does have a lot of fed AP carries, again, I will go the Moor before that, but usually I'm kind of going either of the two in this slot. Fourth item, more Mortius. I'm probably building again into APs, or I could go Shrelders if I'm very fed and I would just want extra stats, which the item is very good to provide. It gives a lot of AD, Armor Pen, Haste as well, that you like on Renekton. The passive is very good too. So every time like you're doing damage or you ult, you're applying this slow like every second. So people cannot escape you. And you're basically your critical mass in like damage. Like no one can fight you at this point. Like Renekton is probably like the best duelist in the game when he has this item. Alongside a Bork, Prowler's Claw, and then maybe like a Black Cleaver or something. Like, no one can 1v1 that. That leads us to the last item, slot 2. You can go Black Cleaver if you want to finish off the build against people that are stacking armor, or you just want to do true damage to people. You can also go a GA, a Stone Play. It's kind of like whatever. And also to touch up on the LDR versus Shredder options. If you're not building any health, which sometimes you might not be doing that. Like, you could do this. It's like top 5 items. So then LDR is getting a lot more effectiveness because, again, the more health that your opponents have, the more damage you deal to them. And because you're not running any health in the build apart from your ult, you're getting way more usage out of it, and you end up just one-shotting people even more. Like, the most damage build in the game is probably like... It probably does feature this with like a Cleaver. But you can build all these items together, but you can also just like not do that. And still do a lot of damage as well. Yeah, that's about it. Nothing's really changed with the full AD build. Like, you can still run this like every game. It's just that you might need to be a little bit smarter when you do it, because a lot of people try and run this every game, but they don't have success. And they'll end up complaining to me like, oh, I can't carry Prowlers, I'm too squishy, and it's mainly because of how they're building, more so like afterwards, which is the problem, or how they lane. Yeah, that's kind of like the whole idea of it. But with all that being said, I think that's everything I want to cover over in the video. It's a pretty long video. Probably going to edit it down a little bit. It's a lot of me talking and rambling, but hopefully I answer some of your guys' questions. I think throughout the video too, I'll leave some like tier lists or some like images to show like when to go certain items over the others. And then that's more helpful too. Just have like a visual component instead of it being just me going over like pages in the client. But yeah, that's all there is to really be said. I will try and make some more videos. But if I don't, make sure to check my stream. I stream pretty much every day on Godrekton_. So if you want to check that out, then feel free to ask me any questions. If you have any more questions too, leave in the comments below and I'll try and answer them in as much detail as possible when I get the chance. And yeah, if you liked the video and you like my content, make sure to like and subscribe. If you didn't, make sure to give me a reason why. Like if there's any feedback you guys have, then let me know. But yeah, with all that being said, thank you for watching and have a good day. Peace out.